We have already observed unusual archaeological finds more than once. However, the findings that we will consider today are not so much amazing as terrifying. Each of them has its own dark secret. In this video, as always, we will make a journey through the ancient world, but it will be accompanied by the spirit of death and despair. The Tarja people, who have been open to the world only since the beginning of the last century, living in the northern mountains of South Sulawesi, still adhere to their age-old traditions and rituals. One of these rituals is the burial of the bodies of deceased infants in holes made in trees. Locals believe that trees absorb the flesh and souls of infants for many years, so they put the bodies inside the trees, wrap them in cloth, and then seal them in the trunk. Numerous holes and patches in the trunks of trees in this region indicate how often this process took place. It is believed that several dozen dead children are placed in each tree. This unusual practice is applied only to infants who died before teething. As strange as it may sound, this is not the only unusual way of handling the remains of the deceased, which is common in Tanah Toraja. It is perfectly normal for these people to dig up their ancestors from their graves, dress them in funeral clothes, and then take them for a walk around the village. The so-called swamp people are found from time to time all over Europe. The conditions inside peat bogs ideally contribute to the preservation of the human appearance. So in them, the body can retain hair and flesh for several thousand years after death. One of the best preserved bog bodies ever found on the mainland is the body of a woman from Hodrimos, named after the place where she was discovered in Denmark in 1879. Analysis of her remains indicates that she died about 2,000 years ago. At the time of her death, she was about 40 years old, quite a mature age for that period of history. However, her death was not even natural. There are signs that she could have been a victim of human sacrifice, which explains why she was thrown into the swamp in special clothes and jewelry. The ancient Danes believed that peat bogs were portals to the underworld, to the gods, and that it was the gods who were responsible for the supply of iron ore. It made sense for them to offer a human sacrifice to the gods from time to time so that they would be satisfied and continue to supply iron ore to the peoples. So there are probably other similar bodies elsewhere in Denmark waiting to be discovered. Scientists from St. John's College in Cambridge were greatly shocked when in April 2015, while excavating in the ground under their university, they came across the remains of more than 1,000 people. The bodies, which mostly date from between the 13th and 15th centuries, are the graves of the medieval St. John's Hospital, from which the college once got its name. In total, about 1,300 skeletons were found, of which just over 400 were intact. Despite the fact that historians of the college knew about the existence of a burial at this place, it had not been discovered before, and no one even imagined that it was so big. According to one version, the bodies are the remains of impoverished scientists, because almost none of the graves have a coffin, and some of the people buried here seem to have been thrown into the ground even without a burial shroud to protect their remains. Strangely, there are no signs of illness or serious illness on any of the skeletons, which makes one wonder how exactly these people ended up in the hospital cemetery. The next exhibit needs no introduction. You will immediately recognize it. This is the golden death mask of Tutankhamun, the famous pharaoh of ancient Egypt. It is one of the most famous archaeological artifacts in the world. But don't think that you know a lot about her, because now we will change your opinion. The iconic mask was first found a century ago when Howard Carter opened the tomb of the young pharaoh. What's new about this mask? So the theory is that it may not have been made for Tutankhamun at all. Perhaps it was intended for his mother, Nefertiti. The theory belongs to the British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves, who for most of his professional career studied this subject at the age of 3,300 years and the era to which it belongs. He has very weighty evidence to back up his words. He was able to demonstrate clearly that the inscription on the mask dedicated to Tutankhamun was carved on top of an older set of hieroglyphs, which are translated as the living incarnation of the sun god, Akhenaten's beloved, the beauty of beauties, the disk of the sundial. Such descriptions have been found on many other artifacts associated with Nefertiti, but they have never been found on objects related to Tutankhamun. Continuing the theme of Egypt, the discovery made in the Egyptian city of Avaris in 2012 seems to prove the existence of a tradition that was previously considered a rumor or myth. Archaeologists digging up the ancient Imperial Palace found 16 human hands in 4 pits in front of a place that was supposedly an ancient throne room. No left hands were found, only the right ones. Their age is approximately 3,600 years, and they belong to the period when the Hyksos ruled a part of Egypt near Tel Ed, Daba. The ruler of the palace was King Kian, and it is likely that the hands were cut off as a sign of reverence for his merits. Some historical records of that time indicate the fact that the king accepted severed hands as payment for gold reserves. The hands most likely did not belong to those who demanded gold. On the contrary, they were presented by soldiers who had to cut them off from the enemy of the tall. The hands may well have belonged to the Egyptians or from other enemies of the Hyksos from the Levant. Interestingly, there are no records of this practice in the original homeland of the Hyksos, in northern Canaan, so it is possible that they adopted this terrible custom from the inhabitants of Egypt. The Tower of Skull niches in Serbia is exactly what you imagine. It's a whole tower made of bones, mostly the skulls of the defeated enemies of the people who built it. One might think that this is a barbaric legacy of what happened many centuries ago. Surprisingly, the tower was actually built quite recently. It was built by order of the Turkish General Khurshid Ahmed Pasha from the remains of Serbian rebels, whom he defeated in 1809. The construction of the tower was a provocative and vindictive act, but the Pasha was angered by the actions of the Serbs when their last battle on Mount Cedar came to an end. Instead of surrendering or fleeing, the commander of the Serbian rebels, Stefan Sinjelic, deliberately blew up his powder room, killing himself and his entire army, as well as destroying the Turkish soldiers who they began to break through to the trenches before the explosion. 952 skulls in the tower were supposed to discourage the Serbs from trying to raise an uprising again. But this plan did not come true. The second uprising took place 6 years later, and the Turks were expelled from the region. Today, only 58 of the original skulls remain, which are in the chapel. 1,000 years ago in the UK, Facedown Burial was considered a form of punishment for immoral behavior. In May 2015, archaeologists discovered many such burials at an excavation site near Oxford. The most amazing find was the burial of a woman who, presumably, was a nun. Immoral behavior seems out of character for a nun. According to historians, she may have been buried this way because her peers considered her sexually active. We don't know the girl's name, but we do know that she lived in the Littlemore Convent, which was founded near the burial site in 1110. According to historical data, The convent was closed in the 16th century due to the immoral behavior of many nuns who lived there. Burying a woman face down was a punishment usually meted out to those suspected of witchcraft, so the nun must have really upset someone. This woman is one of about 100 people buried face down in the area, but she was buried away from the rest and closer to the convent. This confirms her status as a nun. If you think you can correctly determine what is at the site of the mysterious anomaly in the Baltic Sea, please inform scientists as soon as possible. They have been waiting for answers to questions about this place for a very long time. The anomaly, first noticed in mid-2011, looks like the result of thoughtful design. Some people even think it looks like the Millennium Falcon spaceship from Star Wars. Someone also assumes that it is a crashed UFO. Scientists are inclined to believe that this is a natural geological formation. Although looking at these photos, it is easy to understand why people doubt that nature created such forms without any help. This object has a length of about 23 meters and a height of 8 meters. It was detected by sonar scanning of the area at a depth of 90 meters below sea level. Peter Lindbergh, who heads the Ocean X team that discovered the anomaly, says that all electronic equipment stops working at a distance of 60 meters from the object, which makes it difficult to conduct detailed studies. There are surprisingly many underground streets, tunnels, and cities in Europe, but none of them is as breathtaking as the underground city of Kaymakli in Turkey. This secret world has existed under the streets of Turkey for much longer than most European states. It is believed that the first people settled here about 4,000 years ago. At that time, living in the dark between stone and adobe walls was more profitable than living on the outside and being hunted by barbarian tribes that roamed this part of the world. For such a prehistoric settlement, Kaymakli is surprisingly well organized. There are 8 floors in this city, but we can only see 5 of them. For unknown reasons, archaeologists and the Turkish government have never given civilians access to the 3 lower levels. I wonder what they could find there that they don't want to tell others about. The little that we know lurking in the depths is very impressive. What are the winemaking rooms in the Stone Theater worth? And that's it for me. If you like this video, don't forget to rate it, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell. For me, your activity is the best reward. Thanks for your attention. See you soon, bye.